The 10th of November 2017, Ferrari driver Sebastian Vettel has admitted that Mercedes will be tough to beat at the Brazilian Grand Prix, given the pace it displayed during practice. Mercedes topped both of Friday's practice sessions at Interlagos, with world champion Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas comfortably recording 12 results. Hamilton's benchmark of 109.202, set in FP1, was some half a second quicker than Red Bull's Daniel Ricciardo managed in FP2, and a further 10th clear of Vettel. While he expects a very close fight with Red Bull this weekend, Vettel feels it is unlikely that Ferrari will be able to challenge Mercedes for pole position or victory. Mercedes looked very strong, so I think they are a bit ahead, both of them, Hamilton and Bottas, commented Vettel, reflecting on the first day of running. I think it's very close between us and Red Bull. I think we can fine-tune the balance and that should help us, but it will be tough to beat Mercedes as they look very, very quick in all conditions, and on all tires. On his return to the cockpit after missing out on the title, he said, "It was nice to get a lot of laps today. It's more quiet on track than off track, so I enjoy that." Ricciardo echoed Vettel's sentiments on the pecking order. "Mercedes are pretty quick on high fuel. We seem to be quick on low fuel, but I think they'll have a bit more on low fuel tomorrow," he commented. "But relative to Ferrari, I think we had a pretty good day." Vettel's teammate, Kimi Räikkönen, finished third fastest in FP1, but dropped to sixth in FP2, adrift of the frontrunners, after suffering from tire-related vibrations. Latest news: 1958 F1 1956 Mercedes has confirmed that Lewis Hamilton will start the Brazilian Grand Prix from the pit lane, after opting to take his car. F1 1931 F1 1920 Red Bull's garage technician, Greg Reason, talks about pressures, temperatures and compounds in his role managing the teams. F1 1910 Fernando Alonso hailed a fantastic starting position for McLaren Honda at the Brazilian Grand Prix, though remains wary of the F1 1825 Max Verstappen expressed disappointment at Red Bull's inability to match Mercedes and Ferrari during qualifying for the F1 1802. The British Motorcycle Grand Prix will remain at Silverstone through 2020 after a new 3-year deal was agreed between the Motup. 1753 Sebastian Vettel conceded that he chickened out on the brakes into the Senna S on his final run during qualifying for the F1 1743. A shaky Valtteri Bottas reveled in capturing pole position for the Brazilian Grand Prix as he edged out both Ferrari drivers. F1 1724 Lewis Hamilton says he hopes to have a fun race from the rear of the field at the Brazilian Grand Prix, having crashed out of F1 1716 F1 1714 Valtteri Bottas grabbed pole position for the Brazilian Grand Prix, ahead of Ferrari per Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen. F1 1620 World Champion Lewis Hamilton is set to start the Brazilian Grand Prix from the back of the grid after crashing out during the F1 1542 F1 1534 Helmut Marko says there have never been doubts over Renault's parity as an engine supplier, amid a row between the manufacturer. F1 1513 Toro Rosso team principal Franz Tost has refused to back down from the squad's statement, in which it reacted angrily to F1 1451 Lance Stroll's Williams will undergo a gearbox and engine change following his stoppage in final practice for the Brazilian F1 1406 F1 1404 Valtteri Bottas topped a close final practice session for the Brazilian Grand Prix, ahead of Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton. F1 1402 Motup 1400 Marc Marquez claimed pole position, his 8th of the year, for the title-deciding Motup race at Valencia, despite crashing. Motup 1245 F1 1240 Members of the Mercedes Formula One team were involved in a robbery at gunpoint while leaving the Interlagos circuit in Brazil on F1 1231 Sauber team boss Frederic Vasseur is hopeful that the outfit will be in a position to announce its 2018 driver lineup at the F1 1229. Toro Rosso has angrily rejected suggestions from power unit provider Renault that the team is culpable for the recent spate of F1 0959 as the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend kicks on a gear. Take a look at the forces required for the hardest braking point at the F1 0956 Marc Marquez opened a comfortable buffer over his rivals during the third practice session for the title-deciding Valencian. Motup 0931 Williams chief Paddy Lowe says the team is poised to field Robert Kubica during the post-race tire test in Abu Dhabi later this F1 0722 KTM rider Pol Espargaro will start Moto's season-ending Valencian Grand Prix from the pit lane after exceeding his engine. Motup 0536 has expert analysts in the RC213 Vigo. Marc Marquez and Dani Pedrosa are pretty well equipped to give their opinion on Honda's Motup 2027 F1 2022 McLaren Stoffel Vandoorne enthused over the team's long-run performance during practice for the Brazilian Grand Prix. F1 1953 George Russell hailed a huge step up as he made his Formula One weekend debut during practice for the Brazilian Grand Prix at F1 1857. Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas expressed optimism over Mercedes' start to the Brazilian Grand Prix after the pair finished. F1 1830 Ferrari driver Sebastian Vettel has admitted that Mercedes will be tough to beat at the Brazilian Grand Prix, given the pace. F1 1735 F1 1733 Lewis Hamilton remained at the top of the times during Friday's second practice session for the Brazilian Grand Prix, ahead of F1 1624 Toro Rosso's Pierre Gasly is set to receive a further 15 places worth of grid penalties for the Brazilian Grand Prix, bringing F1 1545 F1 1500 officials at Zandvoort have released findings into the feasibility of the circuit hosting a Dutch Grand Prix in the future. F1